Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Morning, Brother Smith. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay, I guess I don't need to ask if I'm being heard. At least I know Brother Smith is hearing me.
I'm here.
I want to thank you again for facilitating the class last week. I went through.
Don't remind people, please.
I'm sure. Based on my
Pass.
it went well, and I shall keep this in mind whenever it needs to reoccur. All right. Give me 1 second. I have a book that I need to collect, and then we will start class. Hold on. Sorry about that delay. We are ready to begin. I realize that our numbers are relatively small this morning, but we shall persist none the same. Let me get my slides up. This was the exercise that I had asked Brother Smith to facilitate last week, Sunday, and got some very excellent responses. Once again, the class is going to be making my job a lot easier in the upcoming classes. So really thank you for your participation. And whilst in today's class, we won't be looking directly at the responses, in the class that follows, or the class following that one, depending on how quickly we get through the material, we will definitely be readdressing those particular passages. So thank you very much, and look forward to looking at that. So for a recap, for those who may not be or recollect exactly where we are, we've been looking at the prescription methods for panic plague, having identified diagnosing the disorder and correlating it through examples we see in scripture. We recognize that this disorder is an ineffective response, essentially, to fear and the things that cause us to fear. And a lot of the times, our walk with Christ or relationship with God is negatively affected depending on how we react to the things that cause us fear. And we will be looking at these booster shots symbolically to identify how they can help us to respond in an effective way to fear. So going to give you so in today's class, what we're going to be doing, we're going to give you a more extensive breakdown on these booster shots and what we will be looking at through identifying them. And then we're going to start with a particular passage that I think is going to be the framework for understanding how these booster shots work. So we highlighted the first of those shots being the belief booster. And we highlighted that as a countermeasure to the panic caused by fear of the unknown or uncontrollable by increasing one's level of faith in God. So essentially, how the idea here is to counter our fear of the unknown, as well as the fear of the things that we cannot control by increasing our faith in God. We're going to see that working in three particular ways. So each of the boosters, we're going to highlight three ways that they can help us to deal with these concerns. So the first one is suppressing suggestive sinful solutions. And the idea here is that when we are faced with fear of the unknown or things that we cannot control, looking at examples in the Bible, looking at examples in my own life, and examples of things that others have told me, find that one of the ways that the devil works is that he brings these solutions that are very suggestive in regards to what they claim they can achieve in dealing with what it is that is bringing you fear. And more often than not, these solutions are sinful in a very subtle way. It's not blatant disobedience in the sense of going against what we would label as the big sin, but it's still sinful in the fact that it is disobedient. Let me give you an example using some of the things that we've looked at. We looked at the case of Saul, where Saul and the Israelites were being pressed by the Philistines, and they were waiting on Samuel to come and give the sacrifice so that they could get God's blessing to fight against their opponents. An extensive period of time passed, and still there was no Samuel. And the Israelites were hiding, they were fearful, they were concerned about their fate. And Saul decided as king to make the sacrifice on behalf of Samuel. On the surface, it seems like a good alternative action. You know, we need God. We shouldn't be going into war. We shouldn't be facing against these particular circumstances without seeking God's blessing. Everybody knew that. And whilst the person who is supposed to do it is not here, clearly somebody needs to fill in. So if they were here, this wouldn't be my course of action. But given that they are not here, given that we don't know what will happen, here is a potential solution to solve this. You step up, Saul, and you make the sacrifice. I'm sure that a lot of the Israelites at the time there who knew that Saul, not being the priest, shouldn't make this sacrifice, would have been willing to contend with that given the circumstances. And that's how these suggestive sinful solutions appear. They use your common sense to help you weigh the circumstances, identify the lack that is there, recognizing that this isn't the ideal, but given what you're going through, this is the best option to take. Another circumstance that probably highlights this even more is the circumstance with Uzzah. For those who don't know, this is a story of the Ark of the Covenant being transported in a way that it wasn't supposed to be transported. And Uzzah was in that procession, and the Ark of the Covenant got rattled in the movement, and it appeared to be falling to the ground. Well, it was falling, and it looked like it was going to fall to the ground. And being the dwelling place of God, Uzzah stretched out his hand to stop it from falling, and he was struck dead immediately. Given the circumstances, this is, I'm sure, a very rational response from an individual who is concerned with the dwelling place of God. He didn't know what would happen if it fell. He knew that this is something that shouldn't happen. And he decided that he would step in and save the day, solve this problem. But God established who should come into contact with this particular thing and how it should become into contact with. His actions, though motivated, I'm sure, by a desire to keep God holy and ensure that no defamation comes to his name or to his image, was directly in contradiction to what God told him to do. And similarly, in Samuel's response to Saul, when he didn't kill everybody so as to provide sacrifice to God. Obedience is more important than sacrifice, and that suggestive sinful solutions try to flip that. It tries to take the importance away from the necessary obedience in spite of the circumstances. And the fear of the unknown, the fear of what we cannot control, sometimes darkens our viewpoint, read the importance of maintaining that obedience. Brother Smith, you have something you want to share?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there was a situation actually. Yeah, that one is hard, we say, but I think it wasn't he who was punished actually. It would have been the leadership, because God had laid out that the thing should have been carried on poles. So this whole idea of this ox tumbling and the thing went drop, that should never have happened, because the prescribed way was that it should have been on poles, steady, etc. So hard in terms of, I don't know that Usa had a chance, but when we are looking at it, we're going to feel, boy, what could a man do, and would you not do the same thing? So I'm saying to you that the examples you are using is, amazing, really powerful, because you really think that you're doing the right thing. But it could be that you're paying the price then when you get the punishment, because of maybe leadership or whoever it is. It might not be your direct problem. You didn't put yourself in that position, and you're trying to make good of the bad situation and still get punished. But these are really really challenging situations, because you can see in the mind of these persons what they're trying to do, and it looks good, and so we have to apply this to our lives. Excellent stuff.
Good point, Brother Smith. Thanks. Good point. Suggestive. I use the word suggestive not just to maintain the alliteration, even though that is naturally of immense importance, but the definition of suggestive, I think, sheds some light onto how these things work. And the word suggestive, it means indicative or evocative. Indicative or evocative. And those words, whilst we may have some idea as to what they mean, still require, at least from my perspective, further definition to understand why this is significant. So the word indicative means serving as a sign or indication of something. And I think that is the first way that these sinful solutions work out. A lot of the times we use something looking like a sign or something looking like an indication of something as a justification to move away from what we know God directly establishes. So see there, this is God saying, go ahead. Yeah, man, that means that this is what I'm supposed to do. Even though we know wholeheartedly that if we're walking directly by what God says we should be doing, this isn't the direction we should be going in. But the sinful suggestion is that, look, here is evidence. Here is a sign to show that, yeah, man, this action will be accepted by God, or this will be okay, or this is fine. And we see that in a lot of circumstances with Bible characters where they use things to say that, okay, God is giving me the go ahead, even though God clearly did not say that that is the case. So I have to be very careful of things that appear to be indications of something being okay, actually being okay. And the next thing is evocative, which means bringing strong images, memories, or feelings to mind. So we have to be careful of the things that appear to be a sign or an indication of it being right. We have to be extremely careful of it feeling right. So if it feels, we can't use okay because of what it brings in me, because of how I feel about it, and it feel like it right, and it feel like it good, and it feel like it is okay. That means that it is an acceptable action. And that is how these suggestive sinful solutions work. They want us to feel comfortable walking down that road or feel like this is what we should be doing. It plays on that fear of not knowing what is going to happen, of not being in control of the circumstance. And it says, hey, you need a sign? You need an indication of what to do? Here it is. And rather than us holding to what we know to be truth, we say, you know what? I'll take that little light over there that seems to be helping me to see which direction I'm to go in. Or because we don't know what we can't control, we say we go with the gut feeling. A lot of the times we use that, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that there aren't cases where the gut feeling turns out to be right. But we have to be very careful of what we allow our gut feeling to guide us into doing, because if we're honest with ourselves, there are a whole heap of times when the feeling that we felt on the inside damned us when we followed its guidance. And anything that we feel on the inside is using our wisdom and our experience to forge our actions. And we know that we are flawed and we are limited in how far we can see and how clearly we can see. So suppressing these suggestions or the suggestive nature of these solutions is one of the things that will manifest from belief boosters. Being able to say, okay, I hear you, I see you, but I will not be influenced by you, because you cannot avoid these things. Once you live in this world and you're trying to live in a godly manner, the way sin tempts you will change. Once it recognizes that, boy, I am trying to be a person that God is pleased with, it knows that the overt, here is sin, big billboard with flashing lights, may not be the way to catch you. So it is going to now work in a more insidious way. You're a businessman. You're working in a country like Jamaica where, boy, sometimes doing the right thing will stifle your career or your business. And what the sinful suggestion solving problems is, don't do the thing, Don't do the thing that's bad. Just lock your eye. Close your mouth. It's working in your advantage. You know it's not the right thing, but it's not you ask for it. Just turn a blind eye to that situation. Just make that go on. And allow your business to flourish. Sometimes that's how it works. You're in a class and you're doing the work, and we have a lot of online school now. We have a lot of online school and such. I don't know how them regulate examinations and tests and whatever, but you studied and you know that you covered the material, and your brain just blank at that particular time, and you know you can open one next tab and just refresh your memory, because it's not that you never study. You know the material. It's just you don't do well with testing. Just look for one answer, man. It's not like you never prepare. Those are the ways that when we're trying to live right, sin will try to to help us to solve our problems. And we have to be very careful. And our faith in God, our recognition that God knows best, in spite of us being able to see beyond certain things or control certain things, is the only way that we can actually suppress these things. So that's the first aspect that we'll be looking at. Second one is unequivocally understanding the unknown. Unequivocally understanding the unknown. And from a bird's eye view of this phrase, there seems to be some paradox there, because unknown speaks to something that cannot be known. So how am I supposed to understand something that cannot be known? And the word unequivocally means in a way that leaves no doubt. So not only, Stephen, are you saying that belief boosters will help me to understand the unknown, you're saying that it will help me to understand in a way that leaves no doubt. That don't make no sense. How can it then be unknown if I can understand it to the point that there is no doubt? Excellent question. Whilst we cannot know what is unknown, what we can understand is what the unknown means. There are certain things that are consistent about the things that we cannot know, as well as consistent about the one who actually knows what we don't know. And that is what we want to get to a point where we have no doubt about it. A lot of the times, the reason we struggle with the things that we don't know is because we waver in our belief about the one who actually knows the unknown. So we say, all right, God promises that he will never leave me nor forsake me. God promises me that things will work out for good if I believe him and I obey him. Yet the minute things are unraveling in a way that we don't like, that understanding of the God who will always work things out in our favor starts to waver. Especially when we start to recognize that God's working out of that thing may not align with how we want it to be worked out. And having an understanding of how God deals with particular things, and understanding that without doubt, without wavering, can change the type of fear that we have when we cannot know things or when we cannot control them. So our intention accessing this part of belief boosters is to move away from that doubt in what actually surrounds this unknown and garnering some understanding of exactly what it means. When I don't know something, when I cannot control something, what does that mean given I am a Christian? Given what God has promised to me, what assurance do I have without any doubt when I am faced with a circumstance that I cannot see beyond? That is the intention here. Not being able to see beyond the circumstance, but rather taking comfort in what I can know wholeheartedly once I am in that particular circumstance. I hope that made some sense. If not, when we get there, we should be able to shed more light on it. And if you have any questions or queries or you're not understanding anything, feel free to ask at any point. And then lastly, conceding conjectural control. Conceding conjectural control. And the word, we know conceding means to surrender, to give up. The word conjectural means based on or involving conjecture, which doesn't really help us understand it if we don't know what the word conjecture means. So naturally, we have to find out what conjecture means, and it means an opinion or conclusion formed on the basis of incomplete information. So it is an opinion that we have, a thought, read something, or a conclusion that we draw without having all the information. And the idea here is that a lot of the time is our perspective or our perception our control of situations or circumstances. A lot of the times we think that we are in control, but that opinion or that conclusion is conjectural. A lot of the things that we think we can control, we can't control. And if we start to relinquish that concept of control, having recognized that, boy, it's because we are short-sighted, or we have not garnered all of the information while we felt we were actually in control in the first place, that can help us to foster greater belief in situations, because we'll start to realize that a lot of the circumstances we thought we could control were uncontrollable in the first place. And if we realize that most of the circumstances that we are in, we cannot control them, then we will not feel as much fear when it seems that that control is being torn away from us. A lot of the despair that we face in circumstances occur when what we thought we were handling, what we thought we had a firm grip upon, is suddenly cast asunder. And we can't make heads or tails of how we are going to proceed, because what I had within my hand is now crashed on the floor. But if we had come to an understanding that, hey, I never really had it in my hand in the first place, and it can end up almost anywhere, and I can't do anything about it, then not only will that help us to have greater gratitude for that privilege, but also it will help us to deal with that loss, because that was something that could have happened regardless. This kind of a mentality we see very clearly in Job, where Job established that all the things that he had and all the blessings and all the wonderful things were never really in his control. So when he lost them, who was he to blame God for something that God was in control of in the first place? And a lot of the times we look at Job and we say, boy, that is Old Testament faith. So, we can applaud him and we can laud him, but we can never achieve that. And part of the reason why we may not is because of that conjectural control. This idea that there are actually things that we are in control of, and if we manifest that control effectively, we can hold those things permanently. If we hold that mentality, then we will always be afraid of losing that control and also giving to the panic when that control is shifting away or when it is actually lost. But if we get to a point like Job, where we recognize that the things that we have within our, that we have or have attained is actually God granting us temporary control over, which he can take back at any point in time, that can help our response to when those things are taken back from us. So those are the three areas that we're going to be looking at. We're going to use passages to highlight how these manifest, as well as scenarios of different characters, either failing to use these things effectively or succeeding, and how that manifests in their belief and their faith in God. The next booster that we're going to look at is boldness booster. And when we highlighted boldness booster, we highlighted that it was a countermeasure to the panic caused by fear of consequences or conflicts by increasing one's level of boldness. So whilst belief booster rather, we highlighted more the unknown and the uncontrollable. We boldness booster, it is the consequences or conflict that leads to that fear of that leads to the panic, and we need an increase in our level of boldness. Just like with belief, we're going to be looking at three facets of the boldness booster that can help us to deal with these consequences. So the first one is solicit, or in soliciting supernatural succor. So the word solicit, it has more than one definition. One of them is not very pleasant, so I'm going to make sure that it's clear that this is the one that we're highlighting. And it's a verb action word. It means to ask for or try to obtain something from someone. Ask for or try to obtain something from someone. And we know supernatural means, in this particular case, we're highlighting on God. So it's not from a natural source, it's not from a human source, it is from a supernatural source. And the word succor, it means assistance and support in times of hardship and distress. Assistance and support in times of hardship and distress. And hopefully for those who didn't know, this is a word you can add to the vocabulary. So the idea here, and we have seen this in multiplicity of scenarios in the Bible, in dealing with the fear that comes from consequences or from conflicts, Bible characters ask God for boldness or for bravery. Or God reassures characters by saying that he provides this courage, he provides this bravery. And that is one of the first facets, understanding how to bolster this boldness booster. A recognition to solicit this succor from, not from an earthly perspective, so not even through me presuming to harness some mentality that helps me to deal with the circumstance. Literally going to God in prayer, in fasting, in whatever means I think will help me to have a closer commune with God in my request, and literally asking for it. And there are a lot of things we see in the Bible that God tells us to ask for. And this is one of them, that you see characters who you'd believe are already filled with this particular trait, still asking for. So that's the first area that we're going to look at. Next one is uncertain and uncomfortable undertakings. Uncertain, we know to mean not known or definite. Uncomfortable, I don't know why part of it gone. Okay, causing or feeling, it is twofold. Forget a moment more on a slide. So causing or feeling slight pain or physical discomfort, or unease or awkwardness. So when something is uncertain, it's something that we don't know or we're not sure about. And this uncomfortable situation can be something that is causing or having us feel either physical discomfort or pain, or in a more mental or emotional sense, unease or awkwardness. And then undertakings speaks to a task that is taken on or an enterprise. And this aspect of boldness boosters is speaking to sometimes the mentality that we have, where if there is uncertainty or if there is discomfort, then I cannot walk or go along with the undertaking that I'm supposed to be carrying out. It's almost like we're waiting for the position where the thing that we know we need to do is not uncomfortable, or the end result is uncertain. And boldness booster is highlighting that if you wait for that particular point, you will never get it done. You have to understand that there are certain things where the need for courage arises that you will never be certain about, or you'll never be comfortable doing. And a part of being bold is being able to carry out that task despite the uncertainty and despite the uncomfortable situation. And then lastly, we have correctly conceptualizing consequences. The word conceptualizing means to form a concept or idea of. And that particular literary device, part of speech, gerund is actually just when you add ing to a verb for it to carry the form of a noun. So like run, the verb, when you add ing and you get running, it is a gerund. So don't make that particular phrase twist you up. It's literally just a verb in the noun form as a result of ing. So conceptualize means to form a concept or idea of. One of the reasons it is difficult to be bold is because of the potential consequences of particular actions. So I could die, I could face very tumultuous hardships as a result of carrying out this particular action. As a result of that, I am fearful to the point of not being able to carry out this act. And one of the ways that the boldness booster works is in helping us to have a proper understanding of what these consequences are. And the Bible does that there are so many scriptures that does this reconceptualization. So we have passages that speak to consider it not loss when you go through severe trials. That's the reconceptualizing. So there's an identification that, boy, this is a loss. When you go through things like this, you are losing. And what the Bible is saying and how the boldness booster wants to help us to overcome this fear is by recognizing that some of the things that you are afraid of, some of the consequences that you think are negative are actually working in your favor. Not necessarily right now, but in building up the things that you will achieve later on. And if we recognize that, boy, the things that I am, quote unquote, suffering now is actually going to manifest itself into greater blessings later on, then that can help us to find that courage in that particular circumstance. And this happens in a natural sense when, as human beings. So for example, a father who may be afraid of a gunman will not resist putting himself in front of his family to defend them from a gunman. Why? Because as far as he is concerned, the protection of his family is a consequence that is beneficial for him, that he will now deal with the fear of death. And that is the way that the Bible tries to help us to reconceptualize these consequences. The things that you think you should be afraid of, the things that you think that leads to this hesitancy to act, is actually going to manifest even greater blessings. So don't be afraid. Rejoice when you go through these particular things, because what it means is that even though you're suffering now, even though you're going through this hardship now, what you will get as a result of this is far greater than anything else. If you want to look at it on a more secular mentality, it is the idea of sacrificing at this particular point so as to benefit later on. So whether it's through education, you spend a lot of money to educate yourself, to get degrees, so that you can get the job that will pay off all of that sacrifice later on. It's not a wonderful life that you're living whilst you're doing the sacrifice. You have to give up time, you have to give up energy, you have to put out a great amount of effort. That's not in and of itself pleasant, but you do that so that later on, the benefits will be far greater than if you had not done that. Similarly speaking, if we look at these consequences, the things that we suffer in the short term as merely sacrifices that we are making for those long-term and eternal blessings, then it can help us to deal with those consequences in a more positive light. I hope that makes sense. And then lastly, we have backative booster. And backative booster here being a countermeasure to the panic caused by fear of loneliness or isolation by increasing the level of one's supporting cast. And as I said, the word backative here coming from the Jamaican parlance of having people in your corner to back you up, essentially. The first is seeking and supporting siblings. So the first way that the backative booster works is by highlighting the importance of seeking and supporting siblings. And siblings here being specifically siblings in Christ. The word seeking here means attempting to obtain or achieve. So not just this idea. So you have the idea of seeking in like hide and seek, where you're just looking for something. But then there's the idea of seeking, which speaks to I am seeking to achieve something or to obtain something. And that is the one we want to highlight more intensely here. Not just looking for, because a lot of the times that is why we fail in achieving the type of relationships that we want, because we're just looking for something rather than having a desire to achieve something, to bring something into fruition. So it's not just about having these relationships, it's about the type of relationship that I want. And the idea behind seeking is going after with effort. So it's not just a glance, it's not just looking, it is going after with intent to find. So that is the first part. We should be going after these types of relationships, not just waiting for them to fall into our laps and then saying, boy, you know, it's just so it go. I'd like to have closer relationships in the body, but nobody don't have my interest, nobody don't talk to me, etc., etc. What am I doing? Am I showing interest in other people's interests? Am I talking to people, trying to build relationships with people, or am I just waiting for people to come to me? Am I doing the seeking? And then the second part is the supporting. Bearing all or part of the weight of something. Another issue that a lot of people have that bars the relationship that they have with others is because they don't feel that people can empathize or sympathize with them. So you can't really know what they're going through, so I can't really share it. So the relationship will never go beyond a particular point because you can't understand what they're going through, or I don't believe that you can, so I'm not going to share that. Here we flip it. Just like we're not waiting for them to come, let us not wait for them to bear. Let us take on this mentality of how can I bear? How can I help? How can I support? And I think that if we have that mentality where I want us to be close, so I am going to do what I think can help us to be close, as well as I want to support you, so I am going to try to see what I can do to help you. That will help me to get the reciprocated response. So rather than going in for support and hoping that someone will seek me, how about I do the seeking? How about I do the supporting? And you'd be surprised how the type of relationship that you actually wanted can be forged through you providing that type of relationship. You want somebody who seeks, you want somebody who supports. Let me be the seeker, let me be the supporter. And of course, you're going to have people that this don't work with. You're going to have some people who aren't concerned about that, aren't reciprocal to your response. And you know what? That is a blessing. That is not the type of person that would be beneficial to you. That is not the type of person you would have wanted in the first place. And we hope that that person would eventually be that person, but you can't force that. You keep seeking, you keep supporting, and I assure you, the right people will end up in your corner, the right supporting members. And it's not about numbers. So don't feel that it needs to be 10, 20, 30 people. But it's a necessity. The fear of loneliness and isolation is powerful. And the panic caused by that is not usually the same kind of instantaneous panic that we feel when there's a fire or when gunshot fire, which appears, affects you, and then goes away. This one stays and this one grows, and it doesn't ring alarms more often than not, until all of a sudden life means nothing. And you start to question why things are like this. And you're so deep in depression now that the relationships that may have helped at the initial point have no effect on you now. A lot of people are plagued by these kinds of demons, and it is not, a lot of the times it goes unnoticed until the signs manifest. We have a personal responsibility to ensure that we don't walk down that path. And one of the ways to help ourselves is by seeking and supporting our siblings in Christ. We're going to look at scriptures that show the importance of us as a family in Christ and the benefits that come from that kind of family. And a lot of the things that we struggle with in our physical life can be amended if we follow those recourses established in scripture. Utilizing unific outings. And yes, I cross out the O so that it will look alliterary, because it has the sound. So that's the most important thing. Utilizing unific outings. And the word utilizing here means make practical and effective use of. Word unific, an adjective tending to produce unity. And we all know what outings is: excursions, activities. We need to reinforce the relationships that we have by making practical and effective use of activities and excursions that can produce unity. When we seek and attempt to support our siblings, that is not automatically going to create the type of relationship that can sustain us, keep us away from loneliness or isolation and the fear that surrounds it. We need to do things that build that unity, and it needs to be practical and it needs to be effective. So if I, for example, am seeking a supporting or to support a relationship with Sister Endala, so I say, I want to make sure that Sister Endala and I will have the kind of relationship that will help me deal with my loneliness or my isolation. It don't make no sense. I said to Sister Endala, I like to play video games. So how our relationship will be reinforced is by the two of us playing video games. If Sister Endala has no interest in video games, we need to find practical and effective activities and excursions for which to create that unity. Yes, compromise may be needed at times. So I'm not going to tell you that you're going to find the most appropriate overlap of activities. But for the most part, that should be the idea. Looking for things that will bring us closer together that are practical and effective. So if Sister Endala like English and I like English, we can share. Sister Endala, read this book. Sister Endala, I went through this article.
I'm listening to you because I was thinking of you when you were talking about the gerund, and I was saying, but that's not a gerund. It actually is the same thing as the present participle. So I said, boy, I'm going to look this up. So I was glad I looked it up, because in French, it's two different things.
Oh, okay. Unifying taking place already, Sister Endala.
Yes, it made me go and look it up right away.
And that's the point that we're trying to bring out. If you realize that there are interests in certain areas, use that. Use these pre-existing interests. Use interactions with those particular interests to help to unify. And this takes deliberate effort. It can't just be a sit-down thing. You have to decide that, you know what, because this is what I want to achieve, and that's where the seeking part comes. Because this is something I want to achieve, then I shall try to create outings. I shall try to create activities or excursions that we can use as a platform to facilitate this unification. And as a church, that is an important thing. And a lot of the activities that we come up with outside of just our evangelical effort is targeting this unification. It creates the platform for people to realize that, boy, you know, you and I had more in common than I thought. And you and I think alike in this particular area. So now we can foster that growth separate and apart from these forged activities by the church. But if we don't do this, then the most that we're going to know about each other are the things that happen coincidentally and the relationship that we have with one another, which will take us to a point where we can actually deal with the loneliness and the isolation. We won't get there. So utilizing unific outings. And then lastly, we have consulting competent colleagues. This one is fairly self-explanatory, but because we've been defining terms all over the place, we will add this one. So consulting means having to have discussions with before undertaking a course of action. And the word competent means having the necessary ability, knowledge, or skill to do something successfully. Sometimes we are limited by our sphere of current existing friends. So we're trying to combat loneliness or isolation, and we say, you know what, the most important thing here is focusing on the people I am close to. And the counter to that is that when we need help, when we need support in certain areas, we immediately go to those who are in our sphere. And the drawback of that is that if the people in our sphere are very similar to us, which is more often than not the case, they may be as limited as we are or struggling with the same. And this is where now, to facilitate an effective supporting cast, we need to ensure that we consult competent colleagues. And of course, colleagues here is just to maintain the alliteration. So the same siblings that we have within the church, we may not have as close a relationship as we do with our more immediate circle of friends. But if I need assistance in a particular area, it is to my best interest to find it from those who are competent. I'm sure we know of the situation with Rehoboam, where he was king after Solomon, and there was dissension in the kingdom because the people felt that the restrictions that Solomon had placed on them were too harsh. So they approached Rehoboam as king and said, hey, give us some leniency, the restraints on us. Lighten them for us so that we may serve you more effectively. And Rehoboam approached, Rehoboam's council of elders, who were Solomon's counselors as well, said, lighten the load and the people will be faithful to you. And then Rehoboam went to his friends, and Rehoboam's friends said, boy, them think it light, them think it heavier now. Heavy it up. Heavy it up. That is not the most effective way of speaking, but make it heavier. And Rehoboam followed his friends, and as a result of that, the kingdom of Israel was split into two. Part of overcoming the fear of loneliness or isolation is moving outside of that sphere of comfort, those people who we feel keep us part away from loneliness or isolation to get support from those who are not necessarily as close as us. Because our sphere, the people who are close to us, the people who we deem to be our friends and the ones who know us best, sometimes don't have the right answers. And I use the word consulting because it gives the idea of before you carry it out. A lot of the times we look to the people who have the capability to help us when we crash or when the plan burn up. So we went to our friends and them give us that advice and we went and we did it and it mashed up. And now that potentially strain the current relationship we have with those who we are close to. Consult before. Find out if it's something that you're dealing with, something that you're looking to do in the future, something that you want advice in relation to. Get it early. Get it from those who you think might know. So you're looking to buy a house. And all of your friends not know house. Where you go to your friends for assistance there? Go to those. Go to the members who probably have work in the financial industry or work in the housing NHT. Go to those who have houses and ask them, how, Brother David, how did he end up living here? Brother Grennell, how did he end up? Brother Smith, Brother Rowan, just moved. Go to Brother Rowan. What were some of the challenges? What were some of the things that you never took into consideration and you had to deal with after the fact? Rather than you start the process and the process is not going well and now you go to Brother David, this is the case. Brother David said, boy, it's a pity you never come to me earlier because I could have tell you, don't make the mistake I made, don't, etc., etc. So that is one of, and that actually lends the platform for that relationship to bolster. No, I know something else about Brother Rowan. No, Brother Rowan can empathize with me with a circumstance that we're both going through. No, I can continue to consult Brother Smith about the circumstance, and that conversation will lead to me knowing more about Brother Smith and will be laying the foundation for a stronger relationship. Those are some of the things that we can do, and those carrying out those things will help us to overcome this fear of loneliness or isolation. So belief, boldness, and evocative boosters, those are the ways we will be looking at these particular circumstances. And we're going to start by laying a passage foundation for all of these boosters. I think that there's a wonderful passage or set of verses in scripture that almost seem to tick all these boxes just in that particular scripture, and we're going to start that next week, Sunday. All right. We have 3 minutes, 2 minutes. So if we have any, I know that this was a particularly chatty class of mine, so I will ensure that my voice shall ring minimally on next week's class. If you have any questions or queries or comments within these 2 minutes, feel free to share. If not, then in my magnanimity, I shall end the class 2 minutes early. All right, I'm hoping that silence means clarity. So thank you for being a listening class, and look forward to going more in depth on next week. Don't know if anybody can put up back the slide so we can. Okay, thank you, Brother Smith. So tomorrow is Engel Born Day, and on Thursday the 10th is Nikado. So let us prepare our eggs, our flour, and other throwing kitchen accoutrements so that we can bombard Engel with them when we see them, and Nikado as well. Also, let us message them and tell them happy birthday. I don't know if Engel. I'm not seeing Engel here, so don't need for sing as far as I know. Bible class, the series on elders in the local congregation continues on Tuesday. Encouraging everyone to be a part of this. We only have, I think, 3 three remaining, if my calculations are correct. Yes, so this is the third one, and it ends on the fifth session where we'll be having a discussion. So let us be a part of that as much as possible. Nav Life continues, not this Saturday coming, but the Saturday following. Just a point of advice on the flyer, Brother Smith, is still 2021. So not sure if you edit it or Engel can just point it out to him that it needs to change to 22. But yes, we can look forward to that. Brother Smith's screen just vanished. Was at the end of, I know the grief therapy continues on, I think, what's the last Saturday? The 26th of February. So we can, yeah, see there, more calendarization on point. The 26th of February, the grief therapy support group continues, facilitated by Brother Andre. So please, if this speaks to you, feel free to be a part of it. All right, if there are no further announcements, we are dismissed. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday. So I hope that you enjoy the rest of your afternoon and evening and go with God. We are dismissed.